Planning and Research Editor Edmund Nyabola, live from home here in Nairobi. Edmund, I'm not sure if you're in your swimming shorts, but there is a new phrase in town, and that's working from home, which coincidentally is what you are having to do tonight.
Well, Mark, me having to do this from the comfort of my humble abode actually exemplifies what the new face of work does look like. And actually, employers and companies are employing this as an alternative to ensure continuity of work and business. But the question is, how do you ensure quality? How do you ensure timeliness? And of course, issues of supervision when someone is working away from the office? Take a look.
Ephraim Mwiti has been taking this short walk to work for the last 6 weeks now. Dressed down, the tax expert settles down in his home study to begin his day. The global pandemic has shut the doors of his employer's office.
Working from home has its perks. You don't spend 3 to 4 hours in traffic. You get to exercise, at your own time. Sometimes you get to eat a better meal than you would have to when you're working in the office. So it makes a big difference in the way you're able to deliver and add value.
This is the new face of work, the new normal for many Kenyan employees united by technology in communication and delivery.
The lack of the personal interaction. Sometimes you get to walk over to a colleague's desk and ask a question. We don't have that at the moment because you're mostly doing that via the virtual platforms of, say, Skype or Teams.
But every person is different under supervision from that which they are without it. Now you see him, now you don't. Ephraim admits that he sometimes succumbs to the distractions that come with this paradigm shift. From the irresistible, sometimes longer than appropriate entertainment breaks to the allure of the sweet scent of kitchen spoils.
It comes down to discipline. It's about having a work plan. So when you start off the day, you need to have a routine and you need to stick to that routine, because at the end of the day, there is work to be done, there are deadlines to be met.
From my current organization, we are very known to doing remote, so for us it's nothing.
Maureen Njuguna is a director and the human resources lead at Andela, a technology company with staff across Africa working remotely.
Companies have been forced to adjust so quickly in such a short period of time because you still want to continue delivering value and earning revenue. And because of that, they've tried to find whatever means they possibly can to make sure that work is still delivered.
How do you ensure that someone is actually delivering from home as opposed to just spending their time perhaps doing other things?
If you don't have a clear routine where you know you wake up at this time and you start working at this time, then it can be a disruption. I think the second one that we found at least has worked for me and it's working for others is having a clear space that you use. So every morning you know that I have my desk sitting here, or have put this space where that's where I go and plug and play and work from. So a lot of our tools are purely secured. We work with companies that are not based here, so we've had to invest heavily to ensure that we also have data protection for any work that we're doing and delivering for them.
Is this what the future of work looks like?
I think the future of work is already here based on what we're currently going through. Because when you think of it from just the basic operational cost a company would go through, if I'm providing space for an employee within the organization, I have to think of different things. I have to think of providing power for them. I have to think of providing a proper work environment for them. I have to think of the space. And space is not cheap for any organization, they can tell you that.
In the words of famous Irish songster Van Morrison, these are the days of new beginnings. There is no past, there's only future. And this may well be the future of work.
I think work will be evaluated from the merit of the end product, not the people. Not people showing up in office with ties. So long as you can deliver at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you are. That should be the future of work.
That the new normal is stretching the human capacity to the limit could never be overstated, but one thing is certain, that this new face of work is one we are not walking away from anytime soon.
Well, as you see there, Ephraim looks dressed down, and that's exactly what I look like here. You might see the tie and the shirt, but it's called a Zoom suit. down there is a different case altogether. But while Ephraim there and many more might be fortunate enough to still have employment, millions and millions around the country do not have that privilege at this point in time, and because of the COVID-19 pandemic, as Kevin Mutai has been finding out. Kevin?
Well, Edmond, Kenyans are losing jobs every passing day of this global crisis. With the future still unclear, experts are warning that this might not be the worst. No one really knows what the future of employment looks like. Take a look.
I am jobless. I was fired because of the COVID-19. Yeah.
What work are you doing?
I was working as a salesperson at the hub, Karen.
Brenda, not her real name, speaks to NTV on anonymity, revealing how coronavirus pandemic took away her job after the company she worked for shut its doors.
On Wednesday at 9 a.m. wakatuma text message that our contract zimekuwa terminated na tuende tupeleke uniforms na tuende to sign out of the job totally. Kila mtu tulikuwa huko ndani. Tulikuwa watu 4 sales, 1 cashier na 1 manager. Sisi wote tukafutwa hivyo. The whole shop yote tukafutwa hivyo kazi.
As the pandemic roars across the globe, here in the country, many are devastated and hopeless. Brenda and her former colleagues who were sent home are waiting to see if they will be paid their dues.
Sina idea venye nita survive.
Na wenzako?
Sijui venye wao watasurvive because hao pia wako kwa nyumba.
Colette Akwana, an advocate of the High Court, says low-income workers are vulnerable as a result of the pandemic because businesses are struggling to absorb the economic meltdown.
Vitu kwa ground ni different. Most employers are working on bare minimum to keep their businesses afloat. But I think this is not just a unique situation to Kenya. I think the globe is literally scratching its head on what to do. Can we really save jobs? And I don't think...
She is also sounding an alarm over legal battles that might face employers, especially those that are laying off their workers without following labor guidelines.
Most employers may find themselves in a little bit of legal trouble because in trying to save some money today, you may be paying out hundreds of thousands, if not millions of shillings tomorrow in damages for having acted wrongfully.
Some of the worst hit sectors include the tourism industry, where hotel workers have been sent on unpaid leave or even suspended.
Mark, the growing labor crisis have brought about some pertinent issues around employment laws, hasn't it?
Just to paint the picture even clearer, Labour Cabinet Secretary Simon Chelugui has given some insight on how the issues of retrenchment, unpaid leave and more will play out.
We as the Ministry of Labour, together with the CAS and the PS and the whole team, we have engaged in high-level social dialogue with employers through FKE and with employees or workers through KOTU. And what we are saying is, for the first 30 days of this problem, let us engage, let's allow people to proceed on normal leave. So they will get their pay, they will proceed like normal. Then if this thing persists, then the next 15 days we can extend. Some employers are saying they can extend by another 15 days.
Now, let's look at some of the legal aspects that stick out in this unfolding situation. And definitely have to give credit where it's due, Irene Kashindi, who gave me some of these insights from law, the employee rights, what the law says. And first things first, and on the issue of salary cuts, which has actually hit quite close home, as you will hear later in this bulletin. It is here at the Nation Media Group, but this is what should happen. In line with the sections 10, 5 and 19 of the Employment Act, for instance, an employee's remuneration should not be reduced unless consulted and there is consent given to this by the employee. So there must be something in the lines of a document that would be signed to say, I agree with the terms. But to the other scenario that could be drawn here is unpaid leave. And in this particular issue, there is no statutory or constitutional provisions on unpaid leave. Few judicial interpretations by the court on unpaid leave. For instance, here at the Nation Media Group, it was used as one of the scenarios that could be a case where I would go on leave, still be on duty somewhat, working from home, given that we are providing an essential service, but this will definitely be taken off from as an expense, given we are paid during the leave. And on to another scenario here, and the time limits that should be given on all these conditions that are being drawn. And following Article 41 of the Constitution, a salary cuts, unpaid leave should be limited in time. Where possible, a promise for long-term improvement or reimbursement once the operations normalize. So it shouldn't just be an open-ended kind of scenario. And to the issue of redundancies, if after everything has been tried and this COVID-19 pandemic continues with no end in sight, the redundancy scenario, now in this particular case, in line with the Employment Act, employer must demonstrate that the business is indeed affected by the pandemic in order to justify a redundancy. There must be issuance of requisite notices to the individual employees and unions where applicable, and there must be payment of redundancy dues. And on to something that many might have to go to, and that is legal recourse. I'm not telling my boss that's what I'll be doing, but there may be some people who would look at this scenario, and where consultation is not carried out and consent is not obtained, employees can successfully claim the deducted or retained salaries through a court process. A court has power to issue injunctions to stop unlawful variations of terms of service, as well as unlawful declarations of the redundancy. And that is where it stands in terms of just some of the issues you should be looking out for. I see my colleague here, Jackie, is very attentive, because it has hit home here at the Nation Media Group. Some of these measures have also had to be put in place for the next 3 months. Not all doom and gloom. In fact, a new wave of promise is sweeping across the country, isn't it, Brenda?
Yes, it is, Mark. This global crisis has had an unusual effect in Kenya, sparking off an unprecedented wave of innovation and manufacturing. Now, Kenyans all over the place are innovating and creating solutions to homegrown problems, not really homegrown, rather, but problems that are facing us right now. And these innovations, actually properly streamlined, could actually just turn out to be that silver bullet to the unemployment crisis in Kenya. Take a look. The ideas and the execution are coming in raw, fast and furious. Whether it's the curious young minds at the basic level of the education chain, tapping into intuition,
and then from there I draw it closer,
or the institutions of higher learning turning knowledge to reality, Kenyans are churning out new ideas with such incredible talent, effectively finding local solutions to local challenges brought about by this global pandemic.
We all need to value our Kenyan products. We all need to value our Kenyan innovations. And I think this is a good opportunity to celebrate them. And so far, we've had more than 20 companies come up to produce PPEs, which is very exciting. And I'm certain going forward, not only will we produce for Kenya, but we'll also produce for other countries.
Kenya, like many other nations across the globe, has been struggling with access to critical supplies needed to combat the spread of the disease. It is because of this need that innovative minds have been going to work, playing their part by developing and manufacturing ideas. Mass production of face masks, sanitizers, ventilators, and indeed the raw automated hand-washing systems, name them. The pandemic has only served as a catalyst for innovation and actualization of ideas, tapping into the wealth of knowledge and intuition existing in many a Kenyan mind.
There is a need in society. Kenya has entrepreneurs and innovators who are ready to fill that need. And if there's government support also for innovation, which we have seen significantly in this season from the Ministry of Industry and Trade, this will actually lead to a lot of innovation happening within our country.
But while Kenya has often led the way in world-changing ideas, for instance, the mobile money transfer, more often than not, these ideas remain just that, ideas on paper.
These innovations are sometimes difficult to commercialize, and also the lack of linkage between academia and industry also impacts on innovation. So people will have good ideas in academia, but translating those into actual products in the industry is not something that happens.
But even if inventors and innovators translate the ideas from paper to reality, more often than not, they find themselves having to contend with hurdles in the commercialization stages of their project. And the first challenge is theft of ideas due to weak enforcement of intellectual property laws and patent rights. Then there are resource and capacity challenges that nip the ideas from the bud, figuratively speaking, thus killing the aspirations of the innovators.
Innovation is a process that requires a lot of testing of concepts, prototyping, and if the finances are not available to do that, it also stifles the ability for an innovator to actualize their innovation. Also the ability to have IP laws locally that support innovation and to encourage people to also take advantage.
But if this new wave has taught us anything, it is the unlimited potential there is in Kenya. Experts contend that if this rich vault of ideas is tapped into and actualized, it could very well address the challenge of unemployment in the country. Business has always been a viable option. This too is taking a hit from this COVID-19 pandemic, especially here in Kenya. Now, my colleague Lillian Kiari has been exploring this. Lillian?
Brenda, the crisis has disrupted the conducting of business as we have always known it, and our proprietors are being forced to go back to the drawing board and come up with new strategies of doing business to stay afloat. Mudheo Kilu had just stocked up the usual supplies for her cleaning business when the coronavirus arrived in the country and disrupted business as she's always known it.
Disinfecting.
The next 72 hours would send her back to the drawing board in determining how to remodel her business to adapt to the times and beyond.
Pre-COVID-19, we were doing well. We had projects that we had just started. We had some that we were anticipating to start on, but now we've had to put that on hold.
If her business of 4 years was going to survive the times and stay afloat, some things had to change. The 26-year-old began by retraining her staff, then switching to virus-killing disinfectants, cleaning detergents, and purchasing protective gear. As someone in the sanitation and hygiene industry, she's among those on the front line of defending surfaces, shared spaces, and people against the virus.
Our products, for example, some of the disinfectants that we're using, one of them has a residual effect of 7 days.
First time tulikuwa tunatumia disinfectant kwa ma washrooms, but for now tunatumia kila now everywhere we disinfect. You see? Tumejaribu kuongeza vitu zingine ambavyo hatukuwa tunatumia mbeleni.
This new model didn't only come with upward cost adjustments, but also a demand for extra quality and a load of work. Now, her new operational strategy, she believes, can endure the times and perhaps any other emergency in the future.
Before COVID-19, we were being judged by whether a surface is physically clean. Right now, we need to make sure that all surfaces are disinfected and sanitized.
But under the circumstances, remodeling does not really guarantee reliable business. Keep it neat and clean is feeling the pinch just like other businesses.
We usually have 23 employees, but now we've had to let go of 5.
Saving on cost while still delivering services to clients is pushing many businesses to the wall. And so, making operational adjustment is the new norm. While restaurants and eateries have been allowed to reopen upon meeting certain measures, many are thinking of new viable strategies. As the economy takes a major hit with devastating effects, those in business like Kilu can only hope reworking their models will keep them afloat during and after this difficult period. And that's what the business landscape looks like. But this pandemic has touched virtually every sector, including the agricultural industry. Isn't that right, Aoko Kusa?
That's right, Lillian, especially due to the human element of production and unstable markets. For an industry that contributes to a third of our GDP, of course, the effect have been huge. Take a look.
Joseph Lama is a livestock and crop farmer here in Trans Nzoia County. Though sometimes he grows maize, tomatoes are his specialty. This hasn't been a good season for Lamai, and the reason behind that is
COVID-19 ilipoingia, hata mazao hayo hayana mahali pa kupelekwa, maana soko nyingi katika nchi zilikuwa zimefungwa na nyanya hizo ziliharibikia kwa mashamba, na haya ndio yalikuwa mapato yetu ya kurudisha kwa upande wa mahindi.
The pandemic struck at a time when some farmers had just harvested, while others were in the process of weeding their farms, having successfully crossed the planting season.
Hata laborers pengine wataweza kupatikana, naona mashamba yanamea kwa sababu huenda kila mtu ameogopa kutoka katika boma lake, na watu wengi watakosa kutengeneza mahindi vile inavyotakikana.
Miles away in the green county of Kericho, similar fears of farmers incurring losses as a result of COVID-19 have been felt across the leafy valleys.
During the periods when there was no pandemic, we were able to pluck tea much longer time than it is at the moment. You realize it is now about 2 o'clock, but they have to take the green leaf to the buying center to be able to ensure that all the leaf will have been taken to the factory before the curfew time commences.
Chepkwony and Lamai are worried that should the pandemic persist, then agricultural production may also take a nosedive.
Because this pandemic, you know, is global, and it has affected some of the big tea producing countries like India and maybe Sri Lanka and others. Consequently, I think globally the amount of teas now available is not increasing, but rather is decreasing.
Biashara ambayo hauna uhakika mwisho wake, watu huenda wakawachana nayo polepole. So serikali huenda ukaagiza mahindi zaidi, kwa sababu wakulima si kwamba hawana mashamba, ni kwa sababu wamevunjwa moyo.
In 2018, Kenya was the world's largest exporter and producer of black tea, estimated at 488 million kilograms. Chepkwony is skeptical if that will be the case in 2020. Sentiments shared by Lamai in regards to maize production. And now they want farmer protection policies to cushion agribusiness going forward.
Now, these farmers also say that they have been pushed back to the drawing board to come up with workable agribusiness models going forward. Back to you, Mark.